Welcome back. Today is a day for podcasting. There is millions of podcasts in the world. And you might be sitting thinking, yeah, I need a podcast. It's the thing. People are making podcasts work. Prima started her podcast in April. She now has 70 episodes aired. Maybe I should start a podcast. But what we've realized is a lot of podcasts end up in the cemetery. People start podcasts and they never move past the first, I don't know what the number is, 10 or 20 or 30. I don't know. A lot of people start the podcast and then they just abandon the whole thing. So it's like people are starting podcasts because it looks like a thing and then they are not going anywhere with them. And today I do have a guest in the studios. I have Liana, and her thing is more like, how do you not be a number? How do you get in the game and stay in the game? How does your podcast end up being one of those that, does a decade, that actually builds a movement, that actually does some cool stuff? How do you not be a number? And I think the rate of quitting for podcasts is really high. I don't know what it is, but I think it's really, really high. Maybe she'll tell us how many people start only to quit. And I can't wait for what she has to offer because I don't know. When I started my podcast, I wasn't starting a podcast. I was just trying to create a movement. I was just trying to create something. I was just trying to create a space for people. And it just ended up being a podcast. But really, I didn't start a podcast to start a podcast. I started a podcast because that is the best way I would have. Like, that was my best way to help people, if it makes sense. And then later on, I realized, oh, podcasting is a thing and people are podcasting to podcast. And if you're in a place where I don't know if you're starting a podcast, if you want to start one, if you should start one, if you have what it takes to start one, this is going to be for you. I'll interview my guest today through her process because she's been doing this for a while. I'll interview her through the numbers, through what she's seen, and I will ultimately help you understand through this podcast what it takes to get in the game and stay in the game of podcasting. If this is part of what you need to get your voice in the world. So pull a stool, pour your tea, and let's talk about all things podcasting. Ayo, Liana. Welcome to the show. I'm honored to really see you alive today.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, we went through a bit of a rough spell here in Florida with Hurricane Helene, but we are good. We were very lucky. We did not sustain any damage through the hurricane. So my thoughts go out to those in, the coast and in Georgia and in South Carolina and North Carolina that didn't fare so well. So if any of you listening are from those areas, my heart goes out to you. Hopefully you guys are safe. And now it's, starting the rebuilding process of everything.
Yeah, it's I don't know, Florida has been hit more times. And each time it's hit, there's a client of mine who's like, pray for me. I don't know what will. I'm like, what do you mean you don't know what will happen? It's like, I have no idea if I'll survive. And I'm like, what? Like, how bad? And for the next hours, I'm like, okay, please God, save this soul. Oh, please God, help whoever. And so I think it's really horrible. And if you are out there and you've been hit by the hurricane, we're sending you lots of love. We're sending you
absolutely
passion at this moment.
Absolutely.
Let's dive into like what's the problem with the way people look at podcasting as a whole.
So one of the biggest problems I see is they are getting into podcasting thinking it's going to do the same thing as like a viral video and be a quick fix for something. Podcasting is a lot like a blog or a video blog. It takes time for you to build your audience and for you to build the credibility and everything like that to where you get those high numbers. And in your intro, you were talking about the number of episodes before people quit. And it's usually about 10 to 15. And I can give you the number of how many podcasts make it. And it's only about a third of the podcasts that come out that actually make it past those 10 episodes before they quit. Now, what I'm noticing is that a lot of it has to do with a few main things. So one, you have to know what your purpose is for doing the podcast. Two, and it has to be more than money. It has to be more than you wanting to monetize it or more than you wanting to go viral, because neither of those two things are going to happen right away. So you have to have something deeper in doing that. And then second, make sure that what you're talking about is something that you enjoy. I tell my clients, go and write a list of 52 topics. If you can write a list of 52 topics that you can do on your podcast, it's a good start, because you have 52 weeks in a year. So that's a good start. And the biggest thing is your mindset. You have to be in touch with, you know, your why, your reasons for doing it, your purpose, your vision, all of those things. You have to work through all of that, because you're going to come to a point where the numbers aren't going to be the way you want them. People aren't going to be listening the way you want them to listen. And you need to have a strong foundation when times get tough. Otherwise, you're just going to say, forget it. I'm not doing this anymore. It's not worth it. I'm not seeing the results that I think I should see, and you're going to quit. And then also another one is stop comparing. A lot of people get into podcasting because they've been listening to podcasts for so long, and they see these podcasts that have millions of downloads. Most podcasters, when they start, they're doing it on a very limited budget. They're doing it on top of a job or a business or, you know, school or something else that's keeping their time. And they're wondering, well, why can't I get to those higher levels of downloads? You have to remember, those higher levels of downloads come with a team of people doing it. When you start, you don't have a team. You are recording, you are promoting, you are finding the guests, you are doing the interviews, you're doing everything by yourself. And as a one person show, you can't compare yourself to somebody who has a team of 5, 10, 15 people. And the money to invest in ads and promotions and things like that. So you have to learn and work on the mindset that says, I'm doing this on my own and it's going to grow the way it's going to grow, but still, you know, be able to share your authentic voice, your message, and exactly what you want your listeners to hear. And you'll get there. You just have to stay consistent and work on the mindset and realize that it's not going to be a quick overnight thing.
I like it. Like, it's not a quick cash injection strategy. I like that. Podcasting is not the quick cash injection strategy. It's either a purpose thing, or you really have an anchor to something beyond your own self.
Absolutely.
If you're getting in the game for the numbers, if you're getting in the game to be an influencer, if you're getting in the game to be famous, maybe podcasting is not the thing, because it's a long sword. It's like you are seeing years ahead, and you're saying, oh, a podcast now would be a step in the right foot. I like that reset, because it helps a lot. I tell you, I've published 70 episodes, and I have no idea how many downloads I have. I don't care. I say that 100, I'll check. And I'll see if there's a pattern, if there's something I can learn, if I can make things shorter, if I can split. Like, I was like, okay, I'm going to do 100, and then I'll have a look at the stats. And hopefully there'll be a pattern then. Like, I honestly don't care. if there's one download or 10. Because if one person listens to this podcast and turns around and goes and builds a podcast, which is going to last 10 years, this was worth it. If this podcast was supposed to help me or help my guest, I am happy that I did it. And so sometimes you do a podcast, and even if your life is the only life that got changed, that's okay. I feel like that mindset has helped me a lot, because when I do a podcast, I am interviewing people about subjects I am interested in. And my really initial goal is, if this podcast made me better or made my guests better, I'm happy I did it. Like, that's it. It's me and my podcast. If I can pour into them and activate them, if they can pour into me, that podcast was worth making. And everything else is a bonus. So you can see how undisappointed I am. Like, I am not disappointed, because I am not. If I get, you got 50 downloads, I'm like, 50 downloads? Oh my God. Like, I'm like, 50 downloads. That's 50 people in a room. I'm like, oh my God.
I was just going to say that. There's so many people when they get into podcasting that they're like, oh my gosh, I'm not getting the number of people. I only have 20. I only have 30. And if you change your mindset, just like you said, think about that many people listening to you in a room. That completely changes the mindset. You're not thinking of it as like a download. You're thinking, and you can't think about downloads as just simple downloads. You have to think of it as people who have chosen to listen to what you have to say. Whether they listen to just that one episode, maybe that's what they needed, or they choose to subscribe and listen to all of your episodes because maybe that's what they need. It's not just a number. They're human beings. There's people behind that number. And now that everything is digital, back in the day when you had meetings, if you had to speak in front of 20 people live, most people would freak out. Like, 20 people are actively listening to me. You'd be like, oh my gosh. And now everybody is, because of Instagram and social media, everybody's looking at the numbers. You wouldn't know what to do if you had 1,000 people listening to you live. You wouldn't know what to do. But somehow on social media, we've been conditioned to say the more likes and the more downloads gives me validity. It makes me feel like a whole person, or it makes my podcast successful. And the truth of the matter is that's not so. You are valuable, and your voice and your message is valuable simply because it is yours and it is your message. That's it. And when you look at that mindset to where you don't care about the downloads, you don't care about the numbers, and you genuinely just care about sharing your voice, who you are, and your message, and thinking in the back of your mind, this is going to change someone's life, whether you find out about it or not, that puts you in a much better position to keep going and be consistent and get to those higher numbers, because you're not looking at it. You're not, I tell people, set goals for the number of downloads that you want. Set high goals, set impossible goals, but don't focus on just the numbers. There has to be more that you're focused on in order for you to get those goals met, if that makes sense. You have to be thinking about something bigger than yourself, bigger than the numbers.
I'll tell you what my goal is. I have one goal on this podcast, and that is to create the best interviews. That is to help people share their message in a way that literally changes a life from someone just listening. I want people to come here because when they come here, their life gets changed. I want guests to come to my podcast because when they come to my podcast, they feel like they've served. I just want this to be, if you didn't buy any courses, didn't buy any masterclasses, didn't buy nothing, you can still change your life. Like, that's my goal. That
is beautiful. That's a great goal.
Yeah, that's it. Every day I wake up and I go, how can I be better for this guest? How can I be better? How can I, that's it. how can we create a better interview? And my belief, I'm also very highly spiritual, is that when I create the best content, those who need the content will find it.
Absolutely. I tell my clients that if you, and I'm telling your audience this as well, if you feel, because I'm spiritual myself, if you feel that you have a message, there's something that you want to share, whether it's via podcast, content, whatever, there is a reason for that. And I believe that that's because there is someone out there waiting to hear your message. And they could have heard it from 20, 30 other people and it didn't register. It didn't connect because they're waiting for you to say it. They're waiting to hear it from you. And you may never meet these people. You may never know that you affected their lives or that you sharing your message helped them, but they're out there. Otherwise, you wouldn't have that pull to want to create that content or to speak on that. So I take that.
Yeah. That is like, what you're saying is keep going. What you're saying is hitting my soul. Just keep going.
No, I was gonna say, like, if you have, a lot of people think, and I'm one of these people. So I'm a big imposter syndrome is my troll of choice, so what I like to call it. And I tend to think that everybody already knows what I have to say. I don't need to say it because 10 other people have said it better than me. And I've had to change my mindset. Even me, I've had to change my mindset to realize that it has nothing to do with me. I don't have to feel equipped. I don't have to say the perfect thing. I just have to say it. And every time I make the choice to stay in the fear and to not say it, I'm not hurting myself. I'm hurting the person who needed to hear it. And they didn't, because I chose to stay in fear and I chose not to say it.
Oh my God, that is so true. So true. I'll tell you a story. I come from Uganda. Like, literally, mediocrity is like second nature here. People expect to get bored, go in school, hopefully get some grades, get married, get a job, pay the bills, die. Like, that's the dream. Now, I knew early on that I didn't want this. And I wanted to come online and I wanted a global impact. And I just felt like I had something to share. But when I looked back, I came from Uganda and the only thing that people knew was wild animals, starving kids, poverty. And something in my head kept saying, but Prima, really? Who is going to want to listen from someone like you who is coming from a country that is struggling to give water to its citizens? But there was something that kept saying, go. And I would try and I'd be like, Prima, really, like, stop. And then there was something that kept saying, go. And every time I tried to quit, there was a little voice saying, and I'm like, it doesn't make sense. I listen to Tony Robbins, I listen to Oprah, I listen to anyone and everyone whose message reached Africa. And they said, you can do this. Your voice matters. Someone needs your message. Your message is inside you because somebody's praying. And I'm like, you have no idea what my situation is. And I recall one day my sister sent me videos because she knew I was just obsessed with global markets, and she used to call it motivation. It's like, you're obsessed with motivation. Listen to this guy. So this guy is called Nick something. I don't know. He has no legs. He has no arms. His business or his movement is life without limbs. I put on the tape. The guy had energy that literally just shifts you and draws you in. And he was screaming on top of his voice. And he had so many people screaming back at him. And he said, you can find reasons not to, or you can get up and share your message. Because I guarantee you that the thing that disqualifies you is the very thing that qualifies you to do the thing you're supposed to do. He said, I could sit here and feel pity for myself or have no arms, no legs, or I could give you a reason why you're qualified. And I kid you not, in that moment, I believed that someone needed my message, my story, what I had to say. Because I looked at this guy, he has no arms, no legs, and he's changing the world. I said, this guy has nothing about him that says, oh, these people need to hear what he has to say. But that did not stop him. Having no arms, no legs did not stop him. He had a beautiful wife, beautiful kids, who was changing the world. And I said, maybe someone needs to hear from me, from Uganda, from a country with no water, no roads, no nothing. Maybe me sharing my message is going to inspire somebody to step up because they have it better and they're not utilizing it. Me doing this is going to make someone realize that being divorced 10 times is what gives you the qualification to talk about marriage. And so I just wanted to share that because I feel like it hit hard, like it hit my soul hard. Yeah. But I want to go back and say, when did podcasting become a thing for you? What happened for you to be like, okay, I'm going to do this podcasting thing. I'm going to help people launch without Overwhelm. I'm going all in. Like, when did the tables turn for you? Because we would love to know.
Yeah. So I've been listening since 2015. I love true crime podcasts. In 2017, I was hospitalized with sepsis, and it was like a whole thing, physical therapy, out of work, all the things. And then in 2019, I was back in the hospital, and the law firm, because I'm also a paralegal, the law firm I was working for let me go while I was in the hospital. So I had to find something to do. And so I got another quick job, and I was driving a lot. This was right before COVID. I was driving a lot. So I was listening to podcasts to learn about, first I did virtual assisting. Then I jumped into podcast management, producing, things like that. And as I was helping clients, I had a client come and tell me, you help more with the mindset, with the strategy, and things like that than you actually help with, the weekly, management. You should look into doing that. And so I jumped into that in 2021, roughly 2022, started looking and, helping clients, just kind of getting out there, helping people for free, really, like just, hey, you need help with this part of it, you need help with that part of it. And then as that grew, just creating my framework, which is, I don't focus a lot on tech because I think anybody can have the tech. I focus a lot on balancing between your life and your passion, helping you realize that you can do both. Communication and collaboration, because to me, podcasting is the best form to communicate and to collaborate, because we can build each other up. Authenticity, what you were saying earlier, just sharing who you are, your voice, your message, because people don't need to hear someone else's message. They need to hear it your way, and no one else can say it the way you say it. And then mastering your mindset and feeling empowered through that entire process. So that is how I've been doing it. And I've always felt like there's a purpose for everyone here. We all have a purpose, whatever that is. And for me, it's being a guide. It's helping others. It's, I can't teach. Like I would never be a very good teacher because I don't have the patience for it. But this for me is my teaching moment. This is how I help people realize who they are, what they're meant for, what their voice is here for, and how to share who they truly are with the world.
I like what you said, that no one can say it the way you can say it.
Yeah.
There's a lot to be unpacked there. A lot. And most people don't get it.
Yeah.
There is,
I think it's
There's a lot to be. Tell us more about that, because I feel like there's a lot of people that are swallowed up in imposter syndrome because they don't understand that bit. Because everything probably has been said before, everything has been shared, and people have made millions of dollars are saying the same thing that you're saying. But I want you to help kind of turn the dial. I want you to help us shift how we look at Tony Robbins already saying this, Oprah is already saying this, that guy is already saying this. It doesn't matter.
Right.
People still need to hear it from you. Yeah. Tell us more.
It doesn't matter. So I like to use this example. So you can take 5 different people and have each of them say good morning. And the good morning will sound completely different from each individual person. Not because they're saying anything different, but because they're saying it. Their inflections are different. You can have different accents. You could have had somebody who had a horrible morning, or somebody who woke up and had the best morning ever with the best news. The words are the same. The feeling and the message and behind it are completely different. The same thing is when we're speaking. The words are the same. There's only so many words in different languages. There's only so many words. So people are always listening to the same words, but they're not listening to them in the same way. They say that people have to hear something 7 to 14 times or whatever before it registers. You hear the same words, but the power, the feeling, the purpose behind those words are what you connect with. You don't connect with the words because the words are the same. You connect with that person, with their vulnerability, with their authenticity, with how they make you feel like they understand. Like this person is going through the same thing I'm going through, or this person already went through something that I'm going through now. And it's not the words. It's the power and the feeling and the purpose behind those words that make them something that we gravitate towards. Because Oprah and Tony Robbins say the same thing, but there's people who gravitate to Tony Robbins and there's people who gravitate to Oprah. Same thing with us. There's people like you said earlier, you said that you are the answer to someone's prayer.
Yeah.
I totally believe that. You don't know who out there is praying right now to hear what you went through to help them go through what they're going through. I was talking to somebody, I want to say it was a couple months ago, and he told me that he almost committed suicide, and it was because he listened to a podcast. It saved his life. And that's a really deep way of thinking about it. Like, don't think that, you know, like, let's say you want to do a podcast for entertainment where you share stories about true crime, you know, like that's not necessarily going to save someone's life. So don't think that your podcast always is going to do that, but you have to be prepared that you sharing your message and being authentically you and vulnerable and real could potentially help someone going through something that they feel completely alone. Like, we are now realizing since COVID that we are not alone. We are meant to be in a community. We are meant to collaborate. We are meant to be with other people. And podcasting is a fantastic way of connecting people versus dividing people. It allows us to show like who we are, and allows us to meet people that we wouldn't have had avenues, like you and I would never have been able to meet any other way.
It's amazing what you're saying now, because I actually think that the creator knows better. And maybe COVID was one way of saying, where the world is going with robots and all of these things, you need community. and you can't afford to rely on your neighbor. And so I am going to create this thing so that you can get to connect with people without leaving your house. Like I feel like whatever is happening has happened so we can be in community. But I like what you're saying about you being the messenger of a message that nobody else can carry. Think about it. You have a story.
Yep.
And that story is connecting tissue. When you share your story, people kind of hold on to that as tissue.
Mm-hmm.
You have gone through different things in life. That gives you a lens, that gives you perspective, that gives you opinion, that gives you, like, there's a way you interpret things when they happen. And so when people listen to you, they listen to the person behind the scenes. They listen to you because the way that I interpret things is not the way that my husband interprets things. He's a UK citizen. I'm from Uganda. So one thing can happen and I will see it one way, he will see it the other way. And I'm like, okay. Like the way you interpret the world is not the same as another person. The example I want to give is a very simple example. When I started this podcast, I didn't have all the pieces, but what I knew is that I wanted to help people clarify their messages. Mm-hmm. And I looked at how complicated it gets. I looked at how copywriters make everything complicated. I looked at all the rules and all the frameworks, and I said, there's a better way to help someone with their message without making them feel like they don't know how to market their message. So I said, I'm going to create a podcast and I'm going to help people deliver their message. And so I started doing this podcast and I started saying, hey, y'all, I have 1 subscriber. Woo! We started. And then I was like, oh my God, I can't believe we have 3 subscribers. And then I kept doing that. I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe I now have a name. Oh my God, I can't believe I now have like a proper plan. And there was one woman who started following from the first day when I started saying, I am pregnant for a podcast. And she was like, okay. And then I said, I am in labor. This thing is happening. And then I said, oh my God, episode number 1. I cannot believe this. And I kept making noise. And this was more like, I had a subscriber. Oh my God. And this woman literally came in and said, Prima, because of you, I have now started a podcast. I used to feel like I was too late to the party. I used to feel like I don't have a subscriber base. I used to feel like nobody was listening. I was so embarrassed to death to have a podcast with 1 listener. But when I saw you celebrating in broad daylight that you have 1 listener and had 50 people saying yes, I was shocked. And that made me believe that I'm not late to the party. And so really show up, because I guarantee you it might be just how you do what you do. It's so transparent that you give another person permission to start. And so I really want people to get this. No one is doing it the way you are doing it or the way you can do it because of who you are, your story, the lens of the world that you have, and how you show up as a human being, a real, raw, and unfiltered human being. What is it we need to add? I would love to pivot into the real process that you take people through when they are thinking, oh, I want to launch, but I have Overwhelm and help me. But I want to kind of ask, what is it that we need to add here before we cross over to the framework?
Yeah. So basically, I break my launches down into 8 weeks. And ironically, I am going through that right now because I am launching my podcast in December. So I'm going through this exact framework with everyone, you know, like that I go through with everyone. So like I said, I do it 8 weeks, and we start with figuring out what your message is, what your vision is, what your purpose is. Why do you want to do that? We figure out a name. We figure out what are your goals. We lay down the foundation. Then we go into discovering your voice. How do you want your episodes to sound? How do you want people to hear you? How do you want your episodes to be? How long do you want them to be? Are you doing solo? Are you doing interview? Are you doing a combination of both? How are you going to connect with your audience? Then we go into actually planning the content, planning the episodes, brainstorming ideas, creating a content plan. And then we go into the fourth week is we talk about your equipment. What do you need? What do you not need? What are extras? How do you do, if you have a small room, how do you help it be more conducive to a recording studio? How do you lessen the noise? How do you minimize, background noise, things like that? How do you edit? How do you record? How do you put it on platforms? And then the next week we go into actually recording your first trailer, actually recording your first few episodes, actually editing those. How is your flow, your workflow going to look like? Are you going to record all your episodes at once, edit everything at once? Or are you going to do live? Are you going to pre-record interviews, or are you going to do them live? Are you going to do video, or are you just going to do audio? And then the next week we go into cover art, your podcast cover art, checking out what your brand is going to look like. What do you want it when people look at your cover art? What do you want it to feel like? How do you want them to feel when they see that? And then we go into the hosting platforms. Which one is the best one for you? What's available? What's your budget look like? How much money are you able to invest in the podcast? You can go the free route, or you can actually pay. There's different ways. And then finally, we go into what I call, or it's not my call, but I got this name, Launch Squad. So getting people interested in your podcast with your teaser. When you put your trailer out there, invite people on your socials, send it on your email list, let people know that you've got a podcast coming. Tell your friends and family, even if they aren't interested and they don't understand, most family and friends will support you. So get that squad going. So when you launch, there's people already waiting to hear you. And so we go through all of that, all of those weeks, 8 weeks. We talk about, I have journal prompts that I like to go through. We go through affirmations. We go through, talking through your mindset, like how does this work for you, in the season that you are. Sometimes you're going to be more excited than others. Sometimes you're going to have more time available than others. We look all into that every week. Every week, we focus on one thing or one set of things. And we don't go ahead of the game. We stay in our weeks. And is it longer than a lot of people will tell you out there? Yeah, there's some people who say you can launch a podcast in a weekend. And you can. You're proof positive of that. You launched your podcast pretty quickly, right? But you learned along the way. The way you launched your podcast, would you have done it that way now that you know how much work goes into it?
Naturally, I have to move to get clarity. And so for me, I know me. If I start to think about all this list, it's not happening. And so I need as less detail as possible. I need to take the foot. If I don't take the foot forward, I won't see the other step. And so I like to do things in faith.
Yeah.
Because when the step comes, then it's rewarding. But if I decide that I want all the information at once, usually it doesn't work for me. I need to move before I'm ready. That's kind of for me how I like to do it. I just like to go. Because I always feel like someone is throwing answers at me as I go. Like the pieces will come. Like that's kind of how my head works.
And see, this is great because you are an action taker, whereas I am more of, I need to have a plan and we're both doing it. Like it doesn't matter. And I think for your listeners, I think this should be the main point that you get. If you don't get anything else, this is the main point. You have two women here who are completely different in how they take action. Yet we both decided to take the action. And it doesn't matter if you jump right in like Prima, and you do it, or you do it my way where it takes a little bit longer. The point is just take the action. Just step out in faith and say, okay, I'm ready to take the next step. Whatever
what
that
feels
next
aligned? Like what feels aligned for you?
Correct.
Do you feel like you need, how much do you need before you move? It has to sound aligned. For me, the only thing that mattered is that I knew I had a purpose.
Yep.
I had something to share. I knew that what I had would change someone's life. And even if I just had to start, and somehow for me, I believe that once I put the message out there, the universe comes and says, yes, we got your back. Let's go. That's my experience in life. So I think for me, what I'm saying here is get to know yourself. Where do you thrive? Do you thrive with more information? Is it you thrive with a plan? Is it you thrive with everything, written down, what you're going to say? Find a way that you thrive, and move. Follow every time you do things, kind of document how you work. Because you're going to get frameworks from people, but even out of those frameworks, you kind of need to go in there and pick your strategy.
Absolutely.
You need to go into Eliana's strategy and pick out the bits and pieces. Now that you ask, I was in a program that taught podcast strategy. And I started to go through it. And they started to tell me, this is the tech, and this is the synergy, and this is that. And I was like, yeah, you just lost me. So I just paused. And I went and said, Prima knows her message. She knows her mission. She knows her person, and she's going. And she doesn't need to know Riverside. She's going to do it on Zoom. Because the moment I start thinking about Riverside and this, it's not happening. And so what I did is I went on Zoom, I recorded, I lifted the thing and put it online, didn't edit nothing. And people were like, this is amazing. And I'm like, good. And then I would say, I don't know how to do this part. Then now I would go back and say, where was that? And so for me, it's like I hit a problem, then I go, okay. Oh, they're talking about that. So it's like I need to hit a wall, and then I go, there's an answer. That's how I work.
And that is a great way of looking at it. Like I had a coach, and because I think so many of us run into the fear of we're going to fail. And my coach used to tell us this, and she still says it, and I live by this. And that is, when you take action, there is no failure. You either get the results you want or the lesson that you needed to learn. I live by that. And it's true. Like, even if you jump in and you do everything really fast because you have to take action, and then later on you find, I need the support, I need the help. You can always look for the support at any step you are in. You don't have to get the support at the very beginning. You can get it anytime. I know for me, my services are available wherever you are, whatever step of the process you are. But it's for the same reason that you talked about needing to know what your purpose was, knowing what your voice was. That's why that's the first thing we start off with. Because when you're creating something, doesn't matter what you're creating, whether it's a podcast, content, Instagram, whatever it is, you have to know why you're creating it. You have to know what your purpose is. You have to know what your mission, your values, what is your vision for this endeavor that you're going to take. And if you don't have that, you're not going to go very far because you don't know what you're doing or why you're doing it for.
It's like really getting a taxi without a GPS.
Right. Or without even knowing where you want to go. Like, you get into a taxi, and what's the first question the guy's going to ask you? Where do you want to go?
Yeah. And so really we have to help ourselves, because I don't know. But this is my belief. Failure is inevitable. And so I try as much as possible to fail very quickly, so I can fail forward.
Right.
I try as much as possible to get my lessons very quickly. As long as it's aligned, I take the action. As long as the action feels aligned to me, I just take it. Because I'm like, okay, failure, hurry up, hurry up. Let's move through this.
You're prepared for
like,
it. Yeah.
Like if I fail, good. Like let's just fail forward.
That means you're taking action. Right. Yeah. That means you're taking action. If you're not failing, you're not learning anything. You're not taking action. And your life isn't going to change. For the better, for the worse, it doesn't matter. Your life is going to stay exactly the same. If you're happy with the way your life is, great, fantastic. But I know most of us want to make our lives better, want to make our children's life better, the people around us lives better. And that will not happen unless you take action, unless you do something to move in the direction that you want to go to, whether you do it or not, whether it happens for you in a good way or a bad way. Just take it, learn from it, and then figure out how you're going to change it the next time you try it again. And then just keep trying. Keep trying.
I really love this. I want to ask you about the Become framework. I like it. Would you like to run us through the framework, the Become framework? Because I really think that there is meat in there that I would love for us to share with people.
Sure. So my Became framework, it is balance, community, I'm simply putting communication, collaboration, authenticity, mindset, and empowerment. And I think every one of those words has so much more in it than just the word. And it's why I focus on that versus focusing on the tech. Like, what kind of mic do you need to get? Do you need to get headphones? Do you need to get a new camera? Do you need to get all the latest tech? To me, you can launch a podcast with a headset with microphone like this one, which I'm not even using. I have a separate microphone. You can even do it with your headset and your iPhone or your Android. Just record your voice and you've got a podcast. But the framework that I have focuses on specific aspects of who you are. So balance, you need to realize that podcasting is a part of who you are. It's an extension of who you are. So it's going to be part of your life. So you need to learn how to balance it between being a spouse, being an employee, having your own business. You can do all of those things. You are all of those things, but you can't do everything all at once. So you have to be strategic about what you do when you do it, so you can give it the focus. The communication and collaboration part, I strongly believe that communication is one of the most important, but often the most missed point in life, whether it's relationships, whether it's business. I think so many people try to get to that carrot at the end, and they forget how to communicate and collaborate with the people around them and with their audience. And then authenticity, the A. I think we are in a world where people are no longer interested in fake and lies and cookie cutter and everything looking perfect. We are gravitating more towards people who are authentically who they are. We need to see real. That's it. And for me, authenticity is one of the biggest things that will propel you forward, because people, when you're authentic, you're vulnerable. That vulnerability leads to people feeling like they can connect with you.
I want to ask a question about
go for it.
Authenticity, because I feel like a lot of people want to be authentic. They just don't know how to be authentic. I see people on social media trying to be authentic. And when I look at them, I go, kill me now. Like, has it gotten to this? Like, my instinct just goes, this is bad. Like the person is trying to be authentic. Like I can see what they're trying to do. They're trying to be authentic. I look at them and I go, okay, you gotta be kidding me. What is this? So would you love to break down what authenticity is? Because I feel like there's people trying to be authentic. And when I look at them, I don't know what the word is because I don't have the word. I'm like, God, are you watching this? Where are we going with this? And I can tell, bless the heart, they are trying to be authentic. Maybe that's how they understand authenticity. Can you tell us what authenticity is, please?
So to me, I've always thought this. So if you're trying to be authentic, you're not. Being authentic, to me, my definition of authenticity is being exactly who you are. Flaws, mistakes, quirks, whoever you are from day to day, that is your authenticity. So like, let's say you're editing your podcast and you take a lot of ums and likes and things like that. I like to tell my clients, and this is, take it or leave it. Don't edit too much, because what you want is, if that listener was to meet you on the street, you have to sound exactly the same way that you would in person as you do on the podcast. So for me, I use and like a lot when I talk. It's just the way I talk. I take a lot of pauses. It's just the way I talk. So obviously, when I'm editing my podcast, I'm not going to take those out, because then I'm not going to sound like myself. I have those quirks in my conversation. I have, I talk a lot about my family, about, my son, my husband, things like that. That's who I am. I talk a lot about, Marvel and, things that I enjoy. And sometimes I ramble and sometimes I don't make sense, but that's who I am. And that's okay. So if you are trying to be authentic and you ask yourself the question, is this being authentic? That should raise a red flag that it's not. Because when you're being authentic, there's no question. You have no questions. You are just being who you are. And when we are who we are unapologetically, we don't have any questions. When you're talking to your husband, do you question in the back of your mind, did I say this the right way? Did I, no, you just speak to him because that's who you are. The same thing when you're being authentic. You're just saying how you feel. You're not overthinking it. You're not trying to make it sound perfect or fit in a perfect box. The moment that you question yourself and what you're saying is the moment you are no longer being authentic. You're trying to fit your message into somebody else's box. You heard it somewhere else, and you're trying to pattern what you heard to fit what you're trying to say. And then you're no longer being authentic. You're copying someone else. Whereas if you just come out and say whatever is in your mind, whatever is in your heart, that's where the authenticity is. When you're speaking from your heart, from deep down, where if you listen to it again, you're like, oh, darn it, I didn't know I was going to say that.
I like what you're saying.
There's no notes. There's no, there's nothing scripted. And like for me, when I'm speaking, I don't script. I do bullet points so that I try to stay on track, because I will veer off track. And so, I look at my notes and I'm like, okay, now I want to talk about this. But the message itself is just, it's who I am. It's what comes out, whether it makes sense or not. It's what comes out. So that's how I see authenticity.
I recall a client I had who had issues like showing up, and she had like, I don't know, a mask. When I sat with her in the Zoom room, she was a different person. When I watched her videos, she was a different person. I said, where do you have like these movie characters? Like, why do I talk to you in a different way? And yet on social media, like you're like a different person. What's the difference between the person you are now and the person you are on social media? And she didn't know. And I was like, okay, how do I deliver this point? Because she was faking, whatever. And I was like, how do I deliver this point? And I couldn't. And so I got like a list and I said, okay, try. I said, this is what I want you to do. I want you to try and be the same person offline in this Zoom room as you are on your Facebook profile. And she said, okay. Like, can you try and bring the person at home, in a grocery store, in the kitchen? Can you bring this person to the video that you create online? Because I feel like that's the person we need to see. And she was like, okay. And I was like, what if you stopped being the guru and just became you? Would you understand what that is? She was like, okay, I guess I could try. So I was like, stop trying to be authentic and just be you.
Right.
I don't know though if that's helpful. And then understand that there is people like you who get it. Like I am point blank. I am black and white. In most cultures, I would be rude. I don't know. Like I don't have the gray stuff. I don't have the sugar coats. It's a spade, not, I don't know, not a big spoon. And so for me, that's how I come up in conversations offline, online. And what I realized is because I am that type of person, I attract this kind of people. So when I'm selling an offer, I'll be like, this is the thing I have. This is what it will do for you. If you want to join, amazing. And if you don't feel it, no problem. Keep moving. Like, that's it. I'll be like, the thing is 12 grand, or you can have a plan. That's the price. Like, I don't have squares, brackets. I don't have this whole thing going of, we will find out, let's take it slow. No, like, I'm like, boom, that's the price. Are you coming? And it kind of looks scary, but you'll be shocked that I attract people who say, hey, tell me about your 12 grand offer. I'm like, okay. And so for whatever case you're scared of really being you, you're denying people the opportunity to see that. Like you would say I'm awkward because I'm like, straightforward, cut the chase. It's the truth. Just speak your truth. And most people don't like it, but there's really people who appreciate it. There's people who love that type of feedback of, this is what I see, this is what I'm feeling in my field. And they don't appreciate that kind of feeling good and stuff. And they just want that. And I recall at some point, I said to her, it looks to me like you have self-worth issues. And so maybe what needs to happen is this energy needs to be released. We need to do energy work. Maybe what needs to happen is you have to do some healing work, and that's okay. But get yourself to a point where you literally don't care who likes what you have to offer and who doesn't, because you know that your message exists for the person that it exists for. It's not really even about being rude, it's just about, I'm going to show up as me. And if you like it, amazing. If you don't like it, it's okay. Being okay with people when they don't like you. I think this is the hurdle. There is people who get a lot of self-worth from being liked, from comments, from shares, from so it can be hard for that person to just be them, because maybe they think that who they are is not acceptable, is not welcome, won't sell, is not exciting, is not nice. It doesn't make sense. And so for me, I feel like if there's some deep work to be done, go do that. Get to a point where you just love you with your flaws, with everything, and kind of come and go, this is me. If you don't like it, that's fine. This is me. This is what I got to offer. Who is in? Let's roll. Like I really want people to get there. Is there anything you want to add to authenticity? Because I feel like it's a word that is thrown out there and it is confusing as heck.
Yeah. I wish that there was another word for authenticity. I wish that somebody would come up with a word that actually means the feeling of what authenticity truly embodies. And for me, authenticity is like the main thing. And then when you're authentic with yourself, you have to work on your mindset. You have to master your mindset. So those two are connected. If you feel that you're not being authentic, it's because you haven't worked on your mindset to feel that you are worthy just in who you are, that your message is important just the way it is. And when you fuse those two, I'm getting ahead of myself. When you fuse the authenticity with the mindset, that's where the empowerment comes in.
That's real authenticity, mindset.
Yeah, that's where you feel empowered because, like you said, you no longer care about other people's opinions. You are sharing who you are. You are sharing your message. You are sharing your offers, your services, your products, whatever you have. You are sharing it. And the people who want to come along, great, fantastic, welcome. The people who don't want to come along, great, fantastic, I wish you well.
And I want to say this because I feel like when I had this, I can't remember who said this. When I had this, I was like, oh, that is it. Remember when you're being yourself, you're giving other people permission
to be themselves.
That it's okay. So like when I show up and I just do my thing, I guarantee there's a podcaster going, so it's okay to do a podcast like that. Because I show up with everyone and I have a different conversation with everyone. And so I think there is a podcaster who will be like, so it's okay not to like have a set of questions. It's okay not to do this, not to do this. Not like you can do a podcast that is like. But the thing I wanted to say is about the communication. My goal is to reach a point where I can speak my truth without hurting anybody. And I had to learn that the hard way because my husband is highly sensitive and he cares a lot about what people have to say, how they think about his opinions and all of that. And so in the start, I was just speaking my truth, but I was hurting him. And I didn't know what to do about it because that was my truth. That was me just being me. I was like, dude, it's my truth. What do I do about that? But I realized that I was really crushing his heart. Like I was really hurting him because he's very sensitive. And so I started to understand, like, how can I speak my truth without hurting him? And that has allowed me to get to a place where I can speak my truth without hurting anybody. So how can you be authentic, be all of the things you want to be without hurting another person? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I know. That makes sense. For me, and I actually had this conversation with my son a couple of weeks ago. If you are already thinking that you might hurt someone with what you're saying, or that you're already feeling like this is my truth, but someone might take it the wrong way, you're already that person with that empathy in your heart. If you're already thinking about it. I think that we can't control how other people take what we say. That's not up to us. That's not part of us to control. The only thing we can control is how we show up and how we say our truth. How they take it, that is on them. We can't control that. We can't control that.
But we can, like, when I realized that when I moved from saying, but you do that, and I'm like, this is my experience.
Right.
I desire for this experience to change. Can you help me? Because like, anything for you. And I'm like, okay. So if I take him out of the equation and I talk about my experience and what I desire, he receives that well. And so I started to say, hey, this is what I'm experiencing and this is what I desire.
Mm-hmm.
Would you help me? And he was like, what can I do? But before, I'd be like, when you do that thing, it sounds like this. And I really wish we could change it. And I'd be like, he would like just become a culprit of the rather than I'm really feeling frustrated right now. And what I desire is the other thing. Do you think you can help? It's like, yeah, how can I say you? I want to receive. I'm like,
okay. That is why communication and collaboration in my framework go together. Because you cannot have communication until you are ready to collaborate with the other person. Communication is collaboration. When you're feeling, and I'm the same way with my husband. My husband's very hard-headed, very opinionated. And when I'm feeling something, I can't just go right at him. I have to explain. I have to bring him into the conversation. We have to collaborate together on a better way to get to the result that I want or that he wants. And that's, to me, that's what communication is. I think so many people get into relationships, into, you know, whether they're work, personal, whatever it is, you get into a relationship and you assume that the other person knows what you're thinking, knows what you want, and knows how to get there. And in reality, none of us, there's times where I don't even know what I want. So to expect my husband to know what I want is unfair. And so we tend to communicate with the people that we don't need to communicate with, if that makes sense. Like what I mean by that is when you're in a relationship, let's take a marriage. When you're in a marriage and you have a problem with your husband, a lot of people will go to their girlfriends. Instead of going to their husband and saying, hey, this is bothering me. How can we fix it? How can we work together to fix it? And so communication and collaboration are two things that not only help you, benefit you, but benefit everyone around you, because it's everyone's working together for the same goal. Everyone's working together to get to that point. And when you collaborate and you communicate, you're never going to hurt someone else's feelings, because in that communication and in that collaboration, you're taking that other person's feelings into account. You're bringing them in. And so someone's not going to get hurt when they're brought into the conversation. It's when someone's singled out or left out, that's when the hurt and the insult and the feelings of, you know, the negative feelings come in, because they're not brought into the conversation.
I like to take this back to podcasting: balance, communication, authenticity, mindset, mastery, and empowerment. Is there anything we need to add to the framework to make it more solid, or have we said all of it? Have we left out anything?
No, I think we covered everything and then some.
Yeah, I love this framework. And really, for me, the goal is to go in the world, speak my truth without stepping on other people's toes. So, I don't know. You want to be the person who creates your movement without shaming the other people. Does that make sense? Like I have seen people who became authentic, but they became insulting. And I didn't know that that's the fine line. I think you can speak your truth and you can get your people to come without making everybody else wrong, because they're not wrong. They're just not for you. So how can you just speak your truth and not hurt anybody in the process? I think that's another level of things, because the first thing is you're scared of being you. And then some people, when they take care of that, now they get overboard. Now they're like effing everyone else. And now they're like, I don't need your permission. And I'm like, oh, okay. Like, who called for that?
Right.
No?
Yeah. I think
it
I
can
agree.
get aggressive. Like it can get very aggressive or
Yeah.
overboard when you're trying to say, I am authentic. Like, yeah, you can be authentic without like bringing like a helicopter with you. Does it make sense?
Right. Yeah. Without the megaphone. You can be authentic without the megaphone.
Yes.
Yeah. I think, like I said, I think where that fine line is met is when you are willing to listen to the other person's point of view. So it doesn't, I am going to put my husband on blast. God love him. I love him. When we first got together, we've been together for over 20 years.
Wow.
Not married 19, we hit 20 in May. We 20 years married in May. And I had to teach him that just because someone else disagrees with your opinion doesn't make you wrong, doesn't make them wrong. Yeah. People can have different opinions. Yeah. Just because someone disagrees doesn't mean that they're trying to change your way of thinking. You can agree to disagree, but it's in the respect that you have in listening to their point of view and the respect they have in listening to your point of view. You don't have to agree, but you do have to have respect because everyone is entitled to their own opinion. Everyone comes at life from different circumstances, different points of view, different lenses. Not everyone was raised the same way, had the same experiences. We're not all going to have the same experience. We're not all going to have the same truth. We're just not. But where communication comes in is you have to be willing to put down your fighting stance and say, I'm going to listen to your point of view. I don't have to agree with it. Yeah. I don't have to switch. No. I can have my own. Yeah. But I'm going to give you the space to have your opinion and respect that that's your opinion. And I think if you're coming from a place of, this is my opinion, this is how I feel, I'm very strong in the way I feel, and here it is, I'm giving it to you, but then you leave space for them to come to you and say, well, this is what I think. And you have a good conversation with respect on both sides. You're never going to hurt someone's feelings. You're never going to insult anyone because you're giving them the space to say and feel what their truth is, whatever that is.
In going back to become the podcast way of getting in the world, getting your work out there and really feeling good about it, I would say there's different ways to do things. Yeah. There's different paths to a result. And just owning your path and saying, hey, this is my path. Who wants to go through this path? That's Absolutely. It. Like Absolutely. There's a zillion ways people can do the thing you're trying to do. But you have your unique way of doing it. And so really your goal is to just say, hey, this is how I do this thing over here. Who wants to do it this way? That's just who counts. And everybody else can do it another way. And that's fine.
Right. Yeah, like really absolutely.
Coming at it from a point of there's going to be people for me, people that are not for me. My goal is to show people for me where we are going. And my goal is to help those that are not for me just follow. That's it. And you don't have to hurt their feelings. You don't have to shame them. You don't have to wrong them.
Right.
They are not open to your way of getting the results. And that's totally fine. Yeah, and so totally I wanted to put this out there. Sometimes your message is not a failure. Sometimes the message just is not for the masses, and that's okay.
Yep. You're not for everyone. You're not for everyone.
Do we need the vanity? We do, but I can guarantee you, when I go out and tell someone to be on my podcast, like people who've made a lot of money, they normally have this question, how many downloads do I expect? And I'm like, I'm always like, downloads, no idea. Reach, actually have no clue. This is what I know. That every single eyeball that will see you is your ideal person who you want. So do you want the downloads or do you want clout? And you'll be surprised how many people I'm able to get on this podcast. And I just told them, reach, no idea. Downloads, no clue. But this is what I can tell you, that whoever is listening to my podcast is qualified to be your client. And they have to make a decision. And most times they go, I'll do it. So is vanity important? Yes. But what I find to be more important than vanity is being strong in the value you offer to the world. And knowing that some things don't come in bulk.
Yep.
You may not have the reach, the downloads, and all of those things, but you have something. Just be clear on what it is and just present it wherever you're trying to get your way through.
Yeah. Very true. Well, very true.
Is there anything else you want to touch before we go to, because I want to talk about what you have to offer and how people can join it. Do you want to add anything before that point?
Yeah, no, I think we're good. I think we've covered a lot of the stuff and I love it.
Tell me about the offers you have. Tell me about the way you support people, like shoulder to shoulder. What do you have in the back end that we can be a part of?
So I have so many things. I have digital products, I have workshops, I have webinars, I have audio courses, I do one-on-one. I'm launching in October my it's called Podcast Power Play Sessions, and they're going to be 6 months of unlimited 15-minute coaching sessions. So for those quick injections of I need help with this, you pay one price and it's 15 minutes unlimited for 6 months. My podcast comes in December, and I have a podcast strategy with Heart Facebook group where people can go in there and get support from like-minded individuals. I'm in there. I go live every week, doing coaching, free coaching in the group. I have my email newsletter that people can opt in. I can send you the link later on so you can put it in the show notes if you want.
Yeah,
sure. And that goes with my podcast launch and tech playbook, which is where I break down the 8 weeks and I break down how a checklist, a very simple checklist of what you need to just get started. Very simple. I think it's like a few pages. And actually I can just put it in the chat for you. That way you have it. And yeah, those are the things that I do. That is how I support people. I'm on Instagram. I am on Facebook. I'm on TikTok. I do a daily affirmation. Probably, I don't know how many I have now, but it's all on my Instagram. They're all saved in there. But I go every day, I do an affirmation. Today's podcaster affirmation is what I call it. So I'm doing that for the whole year. So whatever form people need my help, that is where I am. That is where I will be. That is where my purpose is. Wherever people need the help, I want to meet them wherever they are. So whether they're launching, whether they're halfway through their podcast and they need the support, I want to be that support wherever they are. I want to meet them where they are.
Yeah. You do not have to be the best kept secret. You can now be a podcaster. You can now create a podcast. Absolutely. You do not have to be a number. I'll be putting a few links to Ayo, Liana, in the show notes. Be sure to scroll through, kind of see where you are and what feels aligned. And if you're not sure, you're like, I don't know where to start. What I would love to do is get a link from her, which takes you to a call with her, a free call, so she can sit with you and kind of tell you where to start. Her work is really for you who wants to launch without overwhelm.
Yes.
At whatever the phase of your launching is. And so if you want to launch your podcast and you have confusion and overwhelm about anything whatsoever, she is the person. My best recommendation is that you will book a call and get in and with her on a call and kind of see where you are versus where you want to be and what is the best way for her to support you. But there will be other links in the show notes, and you're welcome to look at the links and see if you want to do a self-test thing. Like, oh, I want to go here or I want to go here. But really my recommendation is get on a call. Tell her what you have in mind. Tell her what's blocking the progress. And let her tell you, like, in her system, in her magical world, but I have no idea when my microphone is calling. Can you still hear me?
Yeah.
So in her magical world, I want her to tell you, like, this is going to be your best path. And I think that'll be the best way that you can join her work. Now, the best thing you can do ultimately for me is pause and go. Who do I know that if they landed on this strategy, they would take their message to the world? Who do you know that has wanted to start a podcast for the longest time and for some reason can't get moving? Could be the balance. Oh, I don't have time. Could be the communication. I'm not sure of my message. It could be the authenticity. I don't know who will listen to me. I'm not even sure what's my voice, what's my character. It could be a mindset. I'm not worthy. I don't know. It could even be issues with like healing. I don't feel worthy enough to have a podcast. But it could also be other things. Who do you know that if they understood how my guest helps people, it would be life-changing for their message? Who do you know that is a best-kept secret that if they landed on this, they would give themselves permission to share their message? Because this is the thing. Your message exists in your mind, in your heart, because somebody's praying for the answer. But they won't get the answer if you keep being the secret. We have to get out and say, I am here. This is my message. This is how I can help you. Come. And so who do you know that would find it such a relief to meet my guest? Because really that's what we do here. What I'd like you to do is honor this and get in the private space and say, hey, I know you've been wanting to do a podcast for the longest time. Here, I thought you'd find this helpful. I saw this podcast and I thought about you. That's really the biggest thing you can do for me on top of pull out your app and kind of go to the world's best kept secret and see what are you allowed to do. Can you follow? Can you subscribe? Can you rate? Can you review? What is it that you can do? I don't know every platform and how it works. But what is it that you have the right to do when you pull up whatever platform you're on and you listen to the podcast? I would love for you to press those buttons and do whatever you can. And this is why. Every time you do that, every time you share, every time you subscribe, every time you rate or review, what you're really doing is this. You're blowing a whistle. And you're telling the universe that you need people like you to come to the platform. I believe that together we can change the world. This is a podcast that gets people unstuck in life and business. It gets people unstuck and it reduces suffering in the world. So if you would like to be a part of it, that's how you can help. That's really how you can help. We're getting to the end of this. Elio Lana, and I've been trying to say her name right. I hope I've done a good job. What would be your closing words for us?
Closing words. Let me see. You have a message. Your voice matters. Stop overthinking. Just go out there and share it.
There's no reason to be the best kept secret anymore. Now you're out of excuses. Now
I'm giving you
everything
permission.
exists.
We are giving you permission. This is your permission slip to go out there, be authentically you, share your message, share your voice, because people are waiting.
Yeah. Whatever the kinks are, whatever the awkwardness is, whatever, if you're someone who is like anxious, trust me, that is a ticket to someone to say, okay, she's doing it anxious, I will do it too. Whatever that thing is, if you stammer, go for it. There is someone who is stammering and they're like, who's going to listen to me because I stammer? Trust me, that's a ticket for them to go, I can do it. Whatever the thing disqualifies you, as I already shared, that's exactly why you're very needed in this world. Your message is very uniquely needed in this world. Whatever it is you're going, you have no idea, Prima, this is what disqualifies you. I can guarantee you That is the one thing that qualifies you to go out there and share the message that you're trying to share. So I hope you'll have no excuse for not sharing a message after today. I appreciate you. Wish you a beautiful, beautiful day. And Ariel, Anna, please, thank you so much for pouring into us, for sharing your day with us. We really celebrate you, not just for today, but for all the years you spent in the wilderness mastering this stuff, because this day only got to be this great because of how much time you spent in the wilderness. So we want to celebrate that time when no one saw you completely, you know. And we want to thank you for really being with us. Ariana has a podcast, and her podcast is Power Play. Tell us about the podcast, your podcast, and how people can be a part of it.
So my podcast isn't, so the podcast Power Play Sessions is the offer I was telling you about, the 15 minutes session. Okay. My podcast is coming out in December. I will let you know when I will send you my stuff when I have it. But the podcast is called Your Voice Uncovered, the Became podcast. So it comes out December 2nd, but I will have the trailer out November 18th. So be on the lookout for that. Solo episodes to start, but I hope to bring in interviews down the line. But yes, it is coming. It is coming.
Amen, amen, amen. Have a beautiful day. We love you.